You are giving people the opportunity to find their own answers, just as I have, and connect back in to themselves. So what is it that you believe is the way that you get people to kind of reclaim their leadership or their, their gift and be able to step into the unknown? What is it that helps them to be able to obviously embrace that path?
I'm going to say this in all humility, Terry. It's because they trust me.
No, I believe that.
That we have created an atmosphere where they know that everything we talk about is confidential. They know I hold them capable. I know that they are energetically strong and that they have their own answers.
Excellent.
So knowing that and knowing that I'm listening to them, knowing that I care about their success, they know they are in control of the agenda. That feeling that I'm going to hold them. They can't mess up. They can't say anything wrong.
Hey, and welcome, Kathryn, to the Genius Zone. How are you on this fine day?
I am just fantastic, Terry. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you've got a lot of letters after your name. Would you like to explain? Because we're going to be talking and bringing power to the audience. We're going to be going into leadership to unlock people's confidence. We're going to really dissolve any self-doubt that people have, and you're going to do a live demonstration on how to ground a person and really step them into their power. So all that to look forward to, but let's talk about all these letters that are running after your name.
It's so interesting. People rarely ask me that question, so thank you for that. I did a doctorate in education at Arizona State University. I had been working in the Canadian Arctic, and I wanted a completely different cultural and geographical experience. So that was a wonderful place for me to go. And there were people there that I really wanted to study with. So that was fantastic. And after a career teaching and as an administrator in colleges and universities, I pivoted a little bit into coaching. And so I am a certified executive coach, and I am certified with the International Coaching Federation as a professional certified coach. I'm also a mentor coach, which means that I work with people who are renewing their certificates with the International Coaching Federation. And we do a lot of work around competencies, around people's mindsets and what they're bringing to coaching. So yeah, that's what the letters mean. And those are the doors that those letters opened for me.
Yeah, and they all lead into this beautiful, expansive, wonderful, empowering service that you do offer to people. Now, I'm going to break the absolute fallacy of what people quite often think and what people expect. And that is that people in high level leadership roles always confident in themselves and always feeling like they're in that level of power. And the fact is that some of those leaders and some of those people that are in those roles are actually suffering with deep depreciating elements of themselves. So I'm going to ask a question here. Do you feel that the driver of ambitious people who are up there at the top is that they expect too much of themselves, and they're prejudging themselves and they're not good enough? Where do you think their lack of self-confidence comes from? Because in the genius zone, and I'm just going to throw this out there, much of people's power comes from their pain. And the more driven that they are, the more pain they have endured to be underneath that kind of driving force. So let's break down the typical person that you obviously work with in their leadership role, and tell me some of the things that go on for them, because obviously even the highest CEOs suffer from lack of confidence.
That's such a good point, Terry. And I think it's really important for us, first of all, to recognize no matter where you are in any organization, you have some leadership, you have some responsibility to people around you. You also have the burdens of responsibility. And most of us are extremely judgmental. And many of us are very judgmental of ourselves. We have these voices in our heads that tell us that we're imposters, that tell us we'll never be good enough, that tell us it doesn't matter how much money we make or what car we drive or what our address is. There's more. There's always more. And I think over time, we realize that that shiny object is always out of reach. It's just a little bit beyond our grasp. I've also worked for people who come to me and say, I've met my goals and I'm not happy. There has to be more to life than this.
Yeah.
And I think when we come to that point, that we can really start to unfold what our values really are, what our values are, not the values of the corporation, not the values of the society around us, but what's really important to us. And once we've clarified that, then maybe it's a harder question. So how do you have to change to live into those values? So if someone says to me that their family is their first priority, and I see that they emailed me at 2:00 in the morning, or I see that they sent me a text on Saturday, I'm going to be wondering, what's the misalignment here? This is what you're saying, and this is what you're doing.
Wow. Yeah. Look, in my world, misalignment is the absolute gap in everyone's problem, because we don't even know and we don't realize we're doing it. But this is where we come unstuck, isn't it? It's where we're not honoring ourselves, because we may have our values as family first, or those key values of respect or love or connection or whatever it is. But then on the other hand, we may be doing things that completely sabotage that. And then we're wondering why we're hitting and missing. And I know a lot of the work that you're doing is really, you're a master of questions, and you love to help people to draw their solutions themselves through the questions, and you don't have to give any advice either, which I feel is one of the greatest things in the kind of world we come from, where we don't get burnt out from coaching people because we're not giving them the answers. We're helping them find the answers. And so in a situation where a person has that gap in their leadership, What is the first place where you will start with them? Like, obviously you said you've emailed me at 2 a.m, you've texted me on a Saturday. What happens from there? What is the kind of way that you bring them and center them back or encourage them to find their way?
Our conversation would probably start out with, I noticed this. Tell me about that email at 2 o'clock in the morning. What was happening for you? And they might say, well, I had so many things to do. That was the only time of the day that I could do it. And then I might say, tell me why that's important to you. And let's start to unpack what you feel is really important and why is that important to you.
That is so powerful.
And where do you want to go with that?
And I'm sure everyone can hear these questions. And I know with this kind of powerful questions, it's when we're asking a person, what is it that you truly want? And they may be looking for the love and the connection and the elements that you bring around presence, because they are your 3 key points. And so love, connection, and presence. To be present in your body, to be asking them, what is it that you truly want? So many people will talk about what they don't want and what is the conflict that's going on. But when they can really master that one sentence, and then, as you say, you are then asking them why is it that you want that? And I know it's a very interesting concept that when you ask them, why is that so important? They'll go down certain layers. And then as you ask them, what's so important about that? So, for example, it might be important for me to feel respected and appreciated. And that might be at the top of my list. But then as we go down into the funnel, so to speak, and we narrow it down, at the bottom, what we usually discover as coaches is that what's sitting at the bottom is the pain of what happened and who, where, and what happened to create that belief where they didn't feel. So, for example, respected or appreciated. And in that moment, it's kind of like a landing, isn't it? So when you're navigating their discomfort, Kathryn, and getting them to step into the unknown. I mean, leaders are usually, they like to be competent. They don't like to to be seen as having a wobble. And God help anyone that might come along and criticize them or get them to fall off their perch. But discomfort, they say when we're uncomfortable, we're growing and we're really stretching. What do you think is the reason that a lot of these leaders don't like going into the unknown, though?
It's frightening.
Yeah.
It might be uncontrollable.
Right.
It might challenge the skills that we think we have. We might be a failure.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And so that sense of ourselves as being in control, as being the expert in the room, we might have to question that. And if we're not the expert in the room, who are we?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And do you encourage them to step into the unknown? Because I know that I myself, I mean, what I do, I can do with my eyes shut, and I'm transforming people in my sleep. I believe that leadership has made me weak in some ways. in itself. So being a leader, like I believe I'm the sort of person that came from being an unemployable in the greatest sense possible, a born CEO, to the point where being a non-conformist and everything else, I was not the person that would just kind of like work in the average and just be status quo. I either excelled, and I was like that as a child as well. I excelled and I was up there in the top 5%, or I was down there in the bottom 5%. But it comes a point in life when we get challenged, and I know as a leader, I'm working in radio at the moment. And that, I mean, you've experienced, because you and I have had, this is our third time getting together, and I say third time lucky here. And the other 2 times has been a technical issue. And I become so paralyzed by fear through the technology not working and through me not being competent, because I'm so used to being competent, that I shut down, my brain shuts off, and it's like I do not want to know about it. I don't want to know about it because I don't like making mistakes. But I think because I don't like making mistakes, I make a ton of them. And we all make mistakes. It's just the way that we are.
Yes.
And rather than seeing it as growth, stepping into the unknown, I can say it from me to you, like I could be your very best client right here and now. I am so in fear. I am so in fear of that kind of difference. And yet I want to do it, and I love doing that. But I become in my head and I lose my presence. And I know that this is where you come in, and I almost zone out.
Yes.
So have you got any advice for me on that? Perhaps some questions?
I have a question. How do you want your body to feel in that circumstance?
Oh, exactly what you said, as the opposite of why leaders are the way they are when they step into the unknown. I want to feel in control, and I feel completely out of control. But you asked me a question, and I ought to do my very best to answer that in the truth of, I want to feel totally in control.
Right. So the first place to start is with our bodies. How are you going to feel control in your body?
Well, that's a $64 million question right there. How am I going to feel control in my body? It's almost like I went to a festival of healing the other day, and I tell you, I did a workshop and the room was booked out. It was amazing. And it was standing room only in the end. But during the course of the day, I decided to have some healing from one of the other coaches. And what they needed to do is they needed to kind of step into my aura. And this is bringing me back to the answer to your question. And as they were sort of like doing a scan, if you will, so it's almost a little bit like Reiki, but I feel it's slightly got a little bit more of, I think they do a little bit more science and medical intervention behind it. And it's called pranic healing. And so as they zip around your aura and they go right through, and it's interesting what they said, because they said that at the moment my head and my gut not connected. My head, and they picked it up, they said your wisdom, your third eye is absolutely amazing, which it is. My intuition is on steroids. Like I know stuff that I shouldn't know about, and I'm like, oh my gosh. However, my head, and they picked this up, is too busy, and it's not connecting properly with my body. So I have been asking myself that $64 million question since that festival of healing. What can I do to connect this with the gut and bring it together? And would you have any suggestions for me?
Can we try something?
I'd love to.
I'd like you to put your hand in your heart space. And if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. And I want you just to start breathing slowly into that heart space. And start to feel your heart beating. And maybe just sigh out that breath. And take another bigger breath. And sigh that out. Now we're going to breathe into that heart. I'd like you to imagine that there's energy there. A little ball of blue energy. And it's starting to spread from your heart all through your body. And it's warming your whole body. We're going to have you take one more breath. Breathe it out and open your eyes. What are you feeling in your body?
Wow. Yeah, I'm connected. I feel like I'm in my body. And yeah, and that's amazing.
So
that's amazing.
From where you are now, Terry, in that presence, you had a technical glitch right now. How would you respond from this place where you are now?
I know that I would feel calm enough to be able, I think it's a good question, because when we're calm and we are in our body, we have more space and almost like we've just got more time. We've expanded time. And so I would be able to then think more clearly. So that's a revelation right there, because I go into panic mode because I'm living in my head and I'm out of my comfort zone, like doing the technology and stuff like that, especially with radio. So to be able to pull back and do that breath work and really zone into the heart space. And I love the fact that you've brought around this vision of expanding that feeling right through the body. And the automatic thing to answer your question is, it's almost like time changes, and I would literally end the broadcast and then restart it. Now, that would mean that I would be able to have the chapter that we've done and connect them both together. So that has been done before on the show. It hasn't happened a lot, but it has happened. But I would have the presence of mind to do that. So I think the key is, with the work that you're doing, you are giving people the opportunity to find their own answers, just as I have, and connect back in to themselves. So what is it that you believe is the way that you get people to kind of reclaim their leadership or their gift and be able to step into the unknown? What is it that helps them to be able to obviously embrace that path?
I'm going to say this in all humility, Terry. It's because they trust me.
No, I believe that.
That we have created an atmosphere where they know that everything we talk about is confidential. They know I hold them capable. I know that they are energetically strong and that they have their own answers.
Excellent. Excellent.
Knowing that, and knowing that I'm listening to them, knowing that I care about their success, they know they are in control of the agenda, not feeling that I'm going to hold them. They can't mess up. They can't say anything wrong. The hour that we spend together is their time. If all they want to do is vent, or if all they wanted to do was sit there for an hour in silence and we look at each other, fine with me.
Mm. And do you feel that getting them to that level of what you do, because this is what you do, where you get them to own their authority and you get them to own their energy, and you also get them to own the fact that when they walk into a room, they need to own it? What do you think is the biggest problem why they haven't? Like, what have they been doing? Are they usually walking into a room and shrinking back, or hoping that they can just go incognito?
I would say it's different for different people. Sometimes it's, especially for people who are new in a role, they can hardly believe they're in the role. And all of the work is just coming at them like a fire hose. And so and I'm thinking right now about a conversation I had with a client about exactly this topic. She had been told she needed more executive presence. And so I said, what do you think that is? And so we talked about some of her ideas. And over the course of the conversation, what started to emerge for her was that executive presence was her being true to herself.
Right. Oh, that's very powerful.
And I think that is a journey for people. We're very often not encouraged or not rewarded to be who we are. We're encouraged to be better or smarter or take on more responsibility or charge harder through the politics, without really having somebody say to us, you're fine just as you are. You are enough. You are enough.
Yeah.
And let's think about the strengths. Let's appreciate who you are and what you're bringing. And you're not going to look like the person you succeeded. You might not look like any of your peer leaders at this table. So what are you bringing that's your gift? What are you bringing that nobody else can bring? And once we establish that there's value there, that helps people shift their perspective on themselves a little bit.
Right. Wow. That's incredible. Now, you talk about the 3 keys, which are obviously your values as a person who is really empowering coaches and even high level people. That presence, connection, and love are 3 of the cornerstones of obviously the core of what you're bringing to the table here. Can I ask where those findings came from and how you stumbled over those 3 powerful keys?
Can I tell you a little story?
I'd love to hear one.
I grew up in a very close-knit family, and when my parents brought me home from the hospital, we were living with my grandfather. And my grandfather loved babies. And my grandfather was only at home on the weekends. He had employment away from home. And so I would be in the baby buggy by the stove. I grew up on a farm. This is a long time ago. And my grandfather would come in and he'd call me Toots. And he'd say, "Hi, Toots." And I would be waving my arms and my legs. And he would come and pick me up. And the family story is that as soon as he got me, he wouldn't put me down. He would eat with one hand so he could hold me. And on Saturday mornings, when my mom was trying to clean the house, he'd go along and put my little baby handprint on all the mirrors and all the pictures and everything. And when my mom's sister would come, they would fight over me. So I heard all these stories. I knew that from the moment I came into this world, I was the recipient of unconditional love.
Wow.
And
That is an absolute, that is a first, because there's not many people that I get to speak to today that just that story, and I'm just visualizing the love and the handprints and the voice and just the adoration. And that is a absolute rare gem. My husband always had a saying that you cannot give away something you haven't got. And boy, oh boy, you certainly have that.
knowing that, I think I've been grateful and appreciative of that gift. The reading that I've done, the studies that I've done has really convinced me that we are all connected. And I think back when I was working with children, when I was working with young teachers, I used to say to them, you will fall in love with your students. And I've even noticed that with my adult students. And Bill Torbert, who Jennifer Garvey Berger studied with, he calls it rising to love. That we use our curiosity, we use our sense that people really matter to us to make those connections. And I think that maybe a shorthand way to say that is that we see and appreciate the human across from us. Doesn't mean we have to agree on everything.
Yeah.
But we see that spark. We see that spark in the other person.
Yeah. So I love that. So I just want to say that we do in the show notes have Kathryn's contact details. So if you are really ready to reconnect with a woman of such fine caliber that can really bring you into your presence and your connection and your self-love. And of course, there is that element that you bring to the table where I love what you said, that you are enough. And I know the hypnotherapist Marissa Peer always says that too. And I'm like, oh, you are enough. I mean, is enough enough sort of thing. It's if the cup is full, the cup is full. There's no point pouring more water into the cup if it's already full to the brim. So if you are enough, you are already full of, what you require. Yes. And I know that you talked about bringing self-trust, and I want to conclude with your little special sequence that you're going to do with me, anchoring and perhaps asking a question. And I know that for people that are really just wanting to be in that space where they're held, they want to be able to bring themselves into that level of self-love, self-trust, and self-worth, then, this is your woman. And don't be afraid to step into the unknown, because Kathryn will absolutely be able to help you to draw your self-trust, to be able to step into those spaces, knowing that you are becoming a more expanded person. And I think there is a difference there's a level of discomfort, isn't there? Like, I feel a level of discomfort in what I was talking to you about before in radio. I feel a real level of discomfort. But that's not a GPS necessarily saying you're on the wrong path. I think there's a difference, isn't there, when we're off track, like you brought about in the story at the beginning about the person who says that their family values are very important, but then they're making calls at 3 a.m. or texting on a Saturday. But how do we know the difference between being stretched and being able to step into the unknown with confidence to, oh, come on, you got to get off this path. You're on the wrong track. Is there a way of knowing the difference?
I think one of the questions that we can ask ourselves, or sometimes it's helpful to have someone else ask us, what's the worst thing that can happen? If the worst thing that can happen is that you have to record someone in 2 different times and splice the conversation together, nobody will know the difference. If the worst thing that can happen is that you betray a friend or that you don't live up to your own ideals, maybe that's a clue that you're not in the right place.
Ooh, so let me just open that up for a sec. There's a difference there, and you've gone down the path of if you're breaching your own morals and values as a person, and it's causing you to, I guess, almost, what's the word? Where you're almost sabotaging yourself, sabotaging who you are as a person. So if it's kind of bringing out a bad person in you, is that kind of what you're saying?
And I think that is the question, Terry. Who do you want to be?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be? And what would it take for you to be that person from where you are now?
Beautiful question. Beautiful question.
And remember that a single coaching conversation can have some transformational moments, but most of us have a lot of work to do.
Oh, absolutely. And if that gets to the point where I know I asked myself a question, and it probably wasn't a great question in terms of what happened in my life after, but where I am now, that tells a different story. But I went through this point of when my late husband, he'd brought me into the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and I give all thanks to him today for that. And I transformed my life so incredibly. And I sailed along living very comfortably, and we had a very successful clinic, and we just moved along, and you don't know what you don't know, right? Until you know something else. And then, of course, I came into the online space and found that because of the technology, and that was a challenge. And so, hang on a minute, my angel wings or my halo got a bit of a dent. It was really testing me for who I was. And then as I was building my business online, I asked myself the question, what is my next level? Because I also knew that new level, new devil sort of thing, and that you're going to have to face something. And boy, oh boy, that was a question that opened up a huge element for me, because that sort of took me into that next level of the challenges that I had through my husband's illness, and then having my values really challenged, where I then literally about faced and devoted my whole life to him. And of course, he passed away from CJD, which is a very rare, always fatal disease of a degenerative type where the prions fold. And the whole experience was supposed to happen. And whilst I thought in those little moments that maybe this is challenging me and this is going to where everything ends for me in my coaching career, because now I'm dedicated to my husband, it's actually taken me to the next level now. And I'm actually living his legacy. He always said to me, you need to go out there and you need to work with the world. You need to do this transformational stuff. And that's what keeps me just, I cannot agree more with everything you're saying. And I guess that probably leads you to your secrets with me now.
I just want to say, first of all, Terry, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that mourning and grieving. And what I'm hearing you say right now is that life is for living.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Wow. That's profound. Yes, life is for living and for the living.
And in some ways, and I know you've recently had a guest on talking about grief, but sometimes I think grief can sharpen our presence. It can sharpen our connection. It makes us think and rethink what love is.
Yeah.
And from what you've shared, it increased your capacity to deal with challenges, to deal with new opportunities. So instead of limiting you or putting you into a dark space that I'm sure you were in, but you also began to see that little spark of light.
Yes.
And it's that little spark of light that I think is so important, whether we're leaders, whether we've lost our most important loved one, whether we're living through some sort of natural cataclysm. Yes, we will be undone. Yes, we will be in a place of uncertainty and instability. And we will move through that.
Wow. And this too shall pass.
You know, that ancient wisdom is, I think, available to all of us when we are able to be centered and we are able to find even 5 or 10 minutes of silence and space. And just to be with ourselves.
That's so important. Wow, that's powerful. That is so powerful. I know that you've just spoken into my life, and if that's what you're doing to every other client, I can only just say that, okay, I've been blessed by hearing your words, and there was no advice given either. It was a beautiful way of helping me to see things in a way that you had heard, and coming from a different also perspective, which is absolutely beautiful. I just want to say, look, I love to ask this question, but what is the one thing you'd love to share before we conclude here today?
Yes. So first of all, I just want to make sure, Terry, do you have everything you need? Do you need to take a little deep breath or just shut your eyes for a minute before we start?
I'm absolutely feeling good.
Okay.
Right here and now with you.
So I'm very curious to know, can you share with me one wonderful thing that's happened to you this week?
I have been blessed with this incredible, I don't know, almost ability that I feel came from the crisis of my husband being an advocate. And I have just been informed that I will be supported. I've come into a windfall, if you will, through my own personal advocation of, and it's not about the money either, but it's about the fact of where that leads me to freedom. Money suddenly has changed forms. I've been in a very wealthy position, and I am a wealthy person. But to put it into context, when you lose your significant other and they have been a really good provider, that can create a bit of a wobble. And so hearing that, I feel that I'm really deeply supported. I can't even express the amount of gratitude that I have to God for the support that has come through. And I say that with that abundance of finance that's been able to really just expand me into being present, rather than being in a position of, oh my gosh, looking for where am I next, what I'm going to do next. So I'm very grateful for that.
A word that just really popped out at me that you used was freedom. And I'm wondering what's important about that sense of freedom to you?
That brought a beautiful deep breath to my whole existence. It is the pleasure of being who I am in my entirety without having to be anything else.
And when you are that whole person, what's important about that?
That's my life force. I feel it's just dropped, but I've got a master key 1 of $1 billion energy. And I know that is something that is a gift. I feel that energy is a gift to me. And I feel that brings my life force and really expands it. So having that kind of energy, and to be really, when I look at it, go into that question more deeply. It's not just about me, because it would be very boring if it was just about me. It's about the bigger picture of what that means to what I can do for the world and what I can do for others. So that it almost allows me to come into my gift, into what I'm doing, like here and now.
Yes. So Terry, as we finish our conversation, what's going to help you continue to feel that gratitude for that gift and that influence that you can share?
The word that popped into my head was integration, because it's something that I have not ever been good at. I've been a person who runs, and I run 1,000 miles an hour, and I don't look back. I don't give myself time to go, hang on a minute, boom. I have just achieved this, and I've achieved this, and I've achieved this. So nothing's ever enough. So it gives me the gift of integrating what and where I am and all the things that I have achieved, rather than looking out for all the mistakes that I'm making and stepping into the fear of the unknown.
Terry, how would you like to close off our session today?
I would like to close off this session by thanking you enormously for your generosity. And I also want to bring something else to the table too. You are one of the most gracious coaches, healers, and leaders that I have personally worked with. And I say that because we have had numerous issues leading up, and you haven't once come unstuck about any of that. I had a person that, and this is a them problem, and I don't hear me saying anything wrong, but there was one little thing where they hadn't booked and they'd done something, and it doesn't matter because it's really not a big problem. And they decided that they didn't even want to go ahead with the podcast. So they it's almost like it was a self-sabotaging way for themselves to just quickly get out of it. And I think this is the thing that happens a lot of the time when we're getting afflicted. We're not really thinking about what's that person going through, because it's not really about the attack. It's about where they are. And what you have shown to me is very much of grace. So I just want to thank you so much for the grace that you've brought and the wisdom that you've brought to the table. And you have certainly absolutely made my day.
It's been a lovely conversation, Terry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathryn. And that's it for the Genius Zone. Woohoo!
A show where we have explored through this various topic, along with all the exciting new topics that we bring every week to enhance your personal mastery of excellence. Now, I'd love you to do me a favor. In fact, be part of the Legacy 1 million that I have in the vision for 2028. If you know someone who really would benefit from this recording, from this episode, please share it with them. And when you subscribe, you get notified every week of our episode as soon as it drops. So let's do that legacy thing. Let's share, let's care, let's enrich. And I look forward to bringing you another week of the most enriching content. So until next time, stay inspired, stay awesome, and keep on mastering your excellence.